what?
All right, so my name is Tara Bishop. I'm a registered early childhood educator, and I've been working in the field for the past 12 years. I'm also a mom of 2 boys, David, who is turning 10 in June, and Colby, who is turning 5 very shortly. Both of my boys have autism, and both of them are on different sides of the spectrum. My oldest is considered higher functioning, and my youngest is impacted on a larger scale. This is why I'm standing here. I want to get our story out and explain from my perspective why needs-based therapy and no age restrictions to funding is so very important and needs to be the top priorities of the OAP. David, my oldest, was diagnosed 3 weeks before his 3rd birthday. Our family was lucky. We caught the signs quicker than most, with him being in the daycare I worked at. Staff approached me with their concerns, and I was able, with help from the supervisor at the time, get him an appointment at 5 counties to confirm he had autism. David's considered high functioning, and even at a young age, he didn't need an intensive model for interventions. This is not saying he did not require therapy. David was able to do short burst sessions, running once a week for 6 to 12 weeks, to help him gain skills and give him tools to cope with his day-to-day situations. David has currently been through 4 of these ABA sessions. They've helped him with his speech, learning proper behaviors when it comes to interacting with his peers, and helping with how he can safely calm himself down when things become too much. David is in a typical class setting and is your average student. He's happy and only needs supports occasionally when things become too much and he can't calm himself down. Saying this, David does and will need supports. Becoming older and maturing with his peers, he is now facing more complex social situations which are hard for him to understand all the time. When he's frustrated, he can fixate on what he finds unjust in a situation. This can lead to a breakdown, which sadly for him can become violent. Our newest reaction when in this state of mind is self-injurious behaviors. He will hit himself repeatedly, smash his head against walls, hit his hands on the walls as a form of punishment. To him, when he does something that he deems wrong, he blames parts of himself. So, for instance, his brain for thinking a certain way. So, he wants to punish his brain for making him think like that. And he will hit or smash himself to hurt his brain back. This is a new situation that is happening in our lives. We've had David request to go to the hospital to talk to a nurse, which I followed through with. And I cannot express enough the helplessness of a parent when you take your child to emerge in a mental crisis state. The scariest part is no one is equipped to deal with this because he has autism with the self-injurious behaviors. No one knows how to treat him. Kinnerk deals with mental health, the hospital deals with mental health, but because he's autistic, no one deals with both. Puberty hasn't even hit yet, and if we're already running into these types of issues now, once we have a surge of hormones, I can foresee it becoming worse. These kids that are aging out of the $20,000 a year are being wronged. Every child deserves a chance for full funding. There is going to come a time when David is going to greatly suffer for the lack of therapies that are out there to support him and the clear lack of funding for the older children. They deserve a chance to develop and grow just like every other child where they can meet their full potential. Next, I would like to talk about Colby. When I had Colby, I knew there was a chance of having a second on the spectrum. We know that it's a 1 in 4 shot. But as a baby, he was typically hitting milestones quickly. That changed shortly after his 1st birthday. Colby's speech started to slow down, and then it stopped altogether. He became more in his own world again. I sat down with my coworkers, and we talked about the possibility of him having autism. Just shortly before Colby was 18 months, he was diagnosed on the spectrum. He's considered lower functioning and was placed on the wait list for intensive ABA interventions. While we were waiting for therapy, Colby stayed in daycare to help maintain the skills he still had. Sadly, with lack of funding, Colby was not able to have the direct support he needed and was only granted an enhanced worker part-time. In the morning, he had a staff that helped him one-on-one, but in the afternoon, he did not. And any progress that was being made in the morning was lost. We also had appointments for assessments and therapies through 5 counties to help keep him going until he was into the IDI program. While all this was happening, I ended up having a series of panic attacks and ended up needing to head to Emerge myself to access the mental health center. I was at a breaking point. I ended up leaving my career as a registered ECE. Colby was having a harder and harder time with being in a daycare program, and I was suffering daily anxiety from the pressure of work and caring for Colby the best I could. It was a very, very hard choice to make. Financially, my husband and I were taking a huge hit because I was full-time and I was going to nothing. And my heart broke for leaving a job that I cared so much for. But Colby needed me at that moment, and sacrifices were made to make that happen. I was off work for 18 months with Colby. I used my skills and training to help him as much as I could, but I could only do so much as a parent, and I'm not trained in ABA therapy. At Easter that year, we had one of the scariest things happen. We had families and friends visiting, and Colby ended up slipping out the door and disappearing. He was a child who had no sense of safety, could run extremely fast, and did not respond to his name. He had 3 words that he could speak. This was any parent's worst nightmare. My autistic 2-year-old had walked out of our home in his footy pajamas, and I didn't know where he was. We were lucky. Colby was found within 15 minutes. He went to the park that was close to our house. The scary thing is he crossed the street, and he walked along Park Street, which is 4 lanes of traffic. This was a new reality, and we now have locks on all of our doors. I'm telling you this because I want you guys to understand where Colby was before getting into therapy. I'm telling you this so you can understand the strain of families like mine are under and the choices we have to make. Saying this, shortly after Colby turned 3, we were told a spot would be coming up in the center-based IBI program. Colby got his spot when he was 3 years and 6 months old. He started the program in November of 2017, and he's been going from 9 to 3, Monday to Friday, with every other Wednesday off. And in September, he started going to school every Wednesday.
Before you go on, How old is Colby now?
He's turning 5. He started there the way I've described him, locked in his own world with no sense of safety and only 3 words. He was a flight risk and a safety risk. Colby has had one-to-one therapy based on his needs. His program has been tailored to him, and his goals have been made with observations and data collected by the therapist. And I want to tell you how Colby has progressed now as I just met with his team. Colby's speaking. He's able to communicate his needs. He's talking to his peers. He's laughing and making jokes with his brother. He went from 3 words to full speech in less than 2 years with a needs-based model. He started the IBI program, and he was only able to sit and concentrate for 8 seconds. That's it. 8 seconds before he couldn't handle it. In less than 2 years, he can now sit and independently do self-guided activities. He is learning things in 1 therapy session. His math and language skills could easily be in the level of a grade 1 or 2. Behavior-wise, Colby is now able to walk with an adult. He will respond to his name. He stops when he is asked to wait. This is a child who bolted and would not stop for anyone. This is a child who has tunnel vision, and if he saw something he wanted, like a ball in his environment, he would go for the ball. It didn't matter if there was a road in between. We went to Disney World this past April, and Colby was able to walk beside my husband and I. There were points where him and his brother ran up ahead of us, and I never once was afraid he would run away. I was able to trust him and give him some freedom. In other words, Colby is literally blowing the doors off his therapy. The IDI team has said time and time again that he is learning faster than they can actually keep up with. He has mastered a skill or a program before it's even placed in his daily routine, and this needs-based model has completely changed his life. What does this mean for him? This means that, as of the last meeting, Colby is beginning a transition out of therapy. This is a natural progression. He is already in school 1 day a week, and he will be upping his time with his typical peers in the daycare I worked at. That's right. I'm back to work. When Colby integrated and was happy in his therapy, I was able to join the workforce again. I'm working part-time, and I'm able to do the career I love, feeling confident that Colby is learning and able to grow to his fullest potential. This right here is one story of one child who was able to access need-based therapy. Colby was lucky. He was diagnosed early. He was in needs-based therapy by 3.5. Because of this, he went from a child on the low end of the spectrum, a child where we were looking at needing care for him, possibly for his whole life. He has surprised and wowed us all. He's a child now that can make a future for himself. With the currently laid out OAP, this is sadly one of the last happy endings that you could hear about. The way the funding is being handed out and the fact that therapy is now a bought-for service, families will not be able to afford to have these type of success stories. Intensive ABA therapy that families will need is going to cost triple what our government is funding families. Children that may be able to burst through and shine won't have that chance. The barriers are being placed on families, and these children will hold them back. Our government has a chance here to change lives. The money that is being allotted right now is only going to end up costing the government more in the end, as families end up leaving the workforce. Children who could have been independent as adults are ending up in homes due to lack of intervention when they're young. Colby is a clear example of why we need an OAP program that works on funding a child's needs versus just giving everyone something. My oldest will never need the amount of therapy that my youngest does. They are two very different children with very different needs, and our government needs to listen and rethink how the funding is being given out. These kids deserve needs-based therapy that is funded accordingly. Not funded based on age, not funded based on everyone gets something. This government has a chance to make this right, and I sincerely hope that they're listening. Thank you.
Do you have, aside from the couple things I've heard, needs-based,
Yep.
no limit on the amount of money,
It's not
simply based
that-
on need, not based
Yes.
on.
And it's not necessarily, we have, the money's there. It's just not being funded appropriately. Because we're giving kids that don't need the $20,000, like David when he was 4, he didn't need $20,000, versus the kids that need more. We just need to figure out a shift so that we can bring that money to the kids who need it for the specific reasons they need it. Big time.
Okay.
And we need the idea of the age base scrapped, because like kids like David now, we're running into issues that I would never even thought of when he was younger, and I'm not equipped to deal with that. I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't. I can help him so much, and I can help so far with my ECE base, but after that, I don't know. And it doesn't seem like a lot of people know, and we need to figure out programs that these kids can access and the funding for them. So if there is something, and it's only a spot. I'm sure David, again, if he had a 6-week course sort of thing that I could learn with too, we'd be okay. But I need to have the access to get there.